So, welcome to Conscious Conversations. My name's Luke McLean. Right now, more than ever, anxiety, mental health is more prevalent than we've ever had, especially in Australia with the lockdowns that we've had. And, just with the fear that's been conditioned into us, our mental health, matters more than ever. And, by coincidence, by this beautiful coming together of this world, I got an invite to have a podcast episode with Wendy Suzuki, and Wendy's got a brand new book out called Good Anxiety, and it comes out I think either today or yesterday. And again, in timing with Are You OK Day and World Suicide Day happening this week, this book is an absolute game changer, and she talks about good anxiety and the idea around building a better relationship to our anxiety and using it for good and using it as a way to empower us to be better. So I got a chance to grab an hour with Wendy and talk through her journey as a neuroscientist, and she's quite, she's well renowned in the brain and the neuroscience world. She's got a TED talk with almost 13 million views. She's the author of 2 books now, and is an expert, and not saying that lightly, but she's an expert in her field. And this book is beautiful. It's this mixture of tools, of storytelling, of sort of understanding and unpacking some of the best things we can do to help our mental health, to help our anxiety. And she brings it together in this beautiful story. And I was so lucky to be able to read it. And, I'm super excited for you guys to listen to this podcast and to listen to this episode with Wendy and hopefully grab a book. And for you guys that, maybe are troubled or challenged with your anxiety that we all do have, this book can really help build a better relationship and a bridge to that. So, without further ado, my name is Luke McLean. I'm a life coach. I'm a meditation teacher. So this is huge for me. This is Wendy Suzuki. This is Conscious Conversations, and please enjoy. Wendy, I just wanted to, again, start with understanding your background and how you sort of got into neuroscience, but also how you sort of arrived at exercise and the brain health being, sort of central to your work, but also it sounds like to your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a very, very kind of defined set of steps that I had the good fortune of going through that got me to where I am today. So the reason why I am a professor of neuroscience uh, um, and have kind of de- built this life of science is because the first day of my freshman year at UC Berkeley, I walked into a classroom that changed my view of the world. It was a class called The Brain and Its Potential, and it was taught by an amazing professor. Her name was Marion Diamond, and I like to think of her, and I did think of her as kind of like the Tina Turner of neuroscientists. I mean, I was watching her, and incredible teacher, incredible researcher. I was like, this is like Tina Turner. This was in the 80s, it was when I was
Yeah.
in college. And I was like, I want to be like her. I want to be a Tina Turner of neuroscientists. And, and what did she study? She studied brain plasticity. And
Mm.
that was the first day I learned what the definition of brain plasticity was. And she discovered it because of groundbreaking experiment she did in the 1960s, where she asked, could the adult brain change
Mm.
demonstrably? Because at that time, nobody thought it could. And she did a simple but elegant experiment with rats, and she randomized them into 2 different living environments. One was an enriched environment that I like to call the Disney World of rat cages, a big old rat cage with lots of toys to play with, and the toys got changed out all the time. If you were a rat, you wanted to live in the Disney World of rat cages. Their compatriots were in the impoverished environment and they got free food and water, but no toys and maybe just
Mm.
one other rat to be in that environment. And 3 months later, if the adult brain couldn't change, there should be no difference between the brains in these two environments. But lo and behold, what she found was the outer covering of the brain, the neocortex,
Yeah.
actually grew. It got thicker when those rats were exposed to this enriched environment. And that was the first demonstration of what I call positive brain plasticity, that the brain can adapt to the outside environment. In this case, in a positive way, other cases are in a negative way. But I thought that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. I want to get that for my own brain, and I want to study that, and I want to be Tina Turner just like she is. So that's why I became a neuroscientist.
So, if we hold that for a minute, like when you walk in there, is she, does she have a bit of swagger when she's controlling the room a little bit when she's lecturing? Is that sort of,
Yes.
yeah, because it's like,
So yeah.
just, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so she was extraordinary, and it's not just me that had some sort of personal connection. She and her lectures on human brain anatomy are on Google University,
Mm.
and out of all the thousands of professors that Google went around and videotaped, she's number two
Wow.
out of everybody in the whole world. That's who I got to study with when I was an undergraduate. And so, what made her extraordinary? She had
Mm.
a showman like personality with the brain of a neuroscientist. So I'll never forget, I was in that classroom and she was standing. She's also tall and beautiful. And she had this beautiful like dress on with a crisp white lab coat over it. And she had this hat box at the front of a room. Again, my first day of freshman year at UC Berkeley. And I said, what? Everybody's like, there was only 15 of us. This was a freshman seminar. I said, what's in the hat box? She starts telling us that the human brain is the most complex structure known to humankind. It put us on the moon. It discovered radioactivity and discovered the breast cancer gene. And as she was telling us all these things, she slowly, with her gloved hands, opened that hat box and she pulled out a real preserved human brain.
Oh, wow.
And you can imagine what happened in the classroom. We're like, what is, nobody had seen a real human brain before. And it is striking to see it for the first time out of your head and to realize that that is actually inside our heads. And so she had this instinct for drama and something that would really resonate with her students. And so she commanded that classroom, and in that way she was, in my mind, it was the 80s. She was like, oh, Tina Turner, she's like Tina Turner. So
That's incredible. And just how, like, even today for young people, how important is it to have that person that could guide and direct and have that impact on people? And you hear so many successful people have that lecturer or that teacher or that football
yes.
coach that when they reflect back from their success and their journey can really pinpoint it to a moment or person that really started that influence or got the ball rolling.
Yeah, exactly. So I was so lucky to have her. She guided and protected me in ways that I didn't really understand,
Mm.
because at that time there were very few women in the hard sciences like neuroscience. And I basically didn't didn't notice that. Why? Because I had my mentor. She was an amazing scientist. She was really successful. And so I was kind of, in a good way, blind to everything else. If she could make it, I could make it. She was supporting me. She was guiding me. She was showing me that it could be done. And so it took me a long time to realize, actually, wow, there's actually not a lot of women, when you get up to her level, that is tenured professor. And I wrote her a letter when I was a postdoc, thanking her for kind of protecting me against that for a while, so I could just go along and do what I loved to do, which was the science. But then appreciate that, and just have a new appreciation at that moment when I wrote her the letter,
Mm.
that wow, thank you for being there and showing me the way and showing me that it can be done. Because so many women that I met along the way said, gosh, I never had, all I saw were all the men, all the
Yeah.
white men, and I'm not a white man. And so it discouraged me. It gave me anxiety. It made me question myself. um, so yeah, those role models are so critical, which is why in loving tribute I bring my own hat box into my classroom,
Ah, cool.
and I bring that out every day because she knew best. She that every single time, it is the best way to engage people and get them to say, "Ooh, what else does she have to tell us about the brain?"
That's incredible. That's incredible. Wendy, from there, I just think it's your journey to being an author, and we'll discuss your new book, Good Anxiety, in a minute. But what
Yeah,
does what does that look like from I'm just interested from being a neuroscientist to sort of TED talks to sort of coming to some sort of notoriety through your work. I'm really interested in how that happens for a scientist, and what does that journey look like? Because I'd imagine there's a lot of other people doing great science that maybe don't write books. They might write papers, but don't maybe
right.
get into the spotlight as much. But I'm just interested in your journey to that.
Yeah, yeah. So, my journey was very, very traditional for the first 15 or so years of my academic career. Once I got a faculty position at New York University, I checked all the boxes, I got all the grants, I wrote papers until my face was blue, and did all those things you're supposed to do to be a successful scientist. And I was studying one form of brain plasticity, which is memory, which was also very, very fascinating to me. How does our brain form and retain new long-term memory? So great topic. I was fascinated with it. I wanted to devote my life to it. But something happened that was the catalyst for the TED Talk and the books and things. And I gained 25 pounds, and it wasn't a happy experience. I was trying to get tenure at NYU, and I decided the best way to do that is to do nothing but work. So to put my head down, and I'm just going to go into the lab and I get my work done so I have the biggest chance of getting tenure. Well, in the meantime, I was, I had no friends. I gained 25 pounds. I was eating takeout all the time. I wasn't exercising at all. And I had this wake up call when I went on, I did give myself vacations. So I decided to go on a cool vacation. I went whitewater river rafting in Peru
Oh,
on the
nice. Yep.
Cotahuasi River. And so cool. I went by myself because I had no friends. But anyway, I went on a cool vacation, and I realized that I was the weakest one on that whole trip. There happened to be lots of triathletes, but even the non-triathletes were stronger than me. And it's like, okay, so universe is sending me a message. I got back. I went straight to the gym and I said, look, there's something that I have to do about this 25 pounds. And I started working out. And so it didn't happen overnight, and I also didn't just work out. I cut out the enormous amount of carbs that I was eating in my diet. I really rebalanced my diet, went to the gym, and said I really need to get this weight thing under control. And a year and a half later, I'd lost the 25 pounds. I was stronger than I ever was in my whole life. And I thought, gee, you know what? I think my brain is working better.
Yeah.
I noticed it one day when I was writing my NIH grant, my big grant that is my lifeline as a
Yep.
scientist. And I thought, writing went well today. I've never had that conscious thought in my entire career. What's going on? And the only thing that I changed in my life was exercise. And it was, my memory was better and my focus was better. And for me, that deep focus gives me a better writing session. And
Yep.
that's when I went back and tried to figure out what we know about the effects of exercise on the brain. And guess who was the origin of all the work on exercise? Marion Diamond, my undergraduate
Wow.
advisor, I literally rediscovered her as a faculty member because it turns out if you go back to the Disney World of rat cages, what is the one factor that was most important for the brain changes that she demonstrated way back in the 60s? It was they were running around that Disney World. It was the physical activity. So you can get almost all of those same positive brain effects if you just give the rat a running wheel. And I thought, oh my God, I have made myself into an enriched environment rat um, uh, just by trying to lose weight. And that's when I got fascinated with the effects of exercise on the brain.
Yeah.
And actually, the other thing that really influenced, I mean, it could have been just a hobby. It's like, oh, good. So now you have a better motivation to keep going to the gym. But right when I was noticing that my writing was better, my memory was better, my mood was better, my father exhibited and suffered a sudden loss of his cognition. He couldn't find his way back to our house when he went 8 blocks away to his usual afternoon cup of coffee cafe, just 8 blocks away. He got lost driving back home. And that is a deficit in the hippocampus.
Mm.
Our hippocampus is critical for spatial memory. And I noticed that everything that suddenly went down in function for him had just gone up for me.
Yep.
His memory was terrible. His focus, he was not working well, and he got scared and depressed. And I started to realize the long term potential of physical activity. And that's when I got motivated, not just to have it as kind of a science hobby, but to think about seriously switching my research program as a full professor
Yeah.
completely away from the memory work I was doing to exercise. That was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made because it was like changing my identity and not exactly throwing away, but walking away from the reputation that I had built with blood, sweat, and tears for the previous 15, 20 years and say, oh, let's try a new area. Nobody knows me. I have no publications here, but let's give it a try. Which most people will say, don't do that. But
You,
I couldn't help it.
I
I
could
I had to do it.
I could almost imagine that's in science. It's almost like starting again. It's almost like starting a
Yes.
different business, even though it's in the
Yes.
same realm.
Hmm. It was very much like that. I wouldn't go to the same meetings. I didn't have the same peer group that I had known for the last 20 years. And that makes a difference as you are competing for grants, as you are submitting work. They know you. They know you from when you were a graduate student. And I was going into a completely different area, which gave me pause until I realized that I had no choice. I didn't have the drive anymore to understand the hippocampus and to do that next cool experiment. Instead, I was waking up thinking about how I could get my NYU students to exercise more. So my study would be a long-term exercise study. And I thought, okay, that is my sign. I need I need to do that. Um, and the other element that comes in here is that even though uh, well, this explains the other thing I did, which was I decided to become a certified exercise instructor because I was so into exercise. And I decided to bring exercise into my NYU classroom because I developed a new class called Can Exercise Change Your Brain? And I was just going to go over all the papers, what is the effect of exercise, starting with Marion Diamond. But then I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I could get the students to sweat so they can
Yes.
feel
Yes.
the effects
Yep.
of exercise and really kind of embody that during the class. And so I, with no background at all, except going to a lot of these classes at the gym that helped me lose the 25 pounds, I signed up for teacher training. And the thing that I realized that kicked in is that all of my life, since I was 7 years old, and my father took the whole family to all the traveling shows of the Broadway shows in San Francisco. I grew up south of San Francisco, that I had a secret desire to be a Broadway star, even though I was a very, very shy child and I can't sing. But I've always had this secret desire. And so when I went to exercise teacher training class, uh, and then I got a taste of teaching an exercise class. It was kind of like my own personal Broadway stage. So I was like, I love this. This is so much fun. And I mentioned this because it really plays into why I love giving all the talks that led to my TED Talk, my TED Women's Talk 2018, and why I love sharing not just with my classroom, which I always love teaching, but to make that audience bigger. I think it
Mm.
tapped into that lifelong secret desire to be a Broadway performer, and so I'm able to live my childhood dream in this kind of new direction.
That's awesome. And Wendy, I'll share a quick story from my perspective. I've exercised my whole life, but
Mm.
a couple of 2 months ago, my dad got cancer
Oh, sorry.
suddenly,
Mm.
and within basically 10 days, he went from ringing me to say he was not feeling well to being up there, by his bed to watch him die in the last few days.
Oh gosh.
But and so sort of, and I've always exercised, but when I came back and we were actually I'm traveling with my 5 kids in a caravan at the time, and we're sort of there, and I had this innate want to get up really early and trail. I've always loved running, but to trail run in nature. We were staying at an awesome spot for a month, and every
Mm.
day for a month I would get up before, put my head torch on and run in nature and
Mm.
run, between 10 and sometimes 25 kilometers. And
Wow.
but it was almost like my brain and my emotions needed that month of connection to nature, connection to movement, and spiritually almost a connection back to dad,
Yeah.
to heal. And from
Mm-hmm.
just interested in, it was sort of innate, not planned, but an innate want just to move for my well-being, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, to almost help me heal. And just interesting when
Yeah.
you say how important exercise is. That was not to go and see a counselor, not to talk about it too much, but just to move and feel nature, listen to birds, and the air in your lungs was actually what I needed at that particular time.
Yeah, I totally understand that desire. And from a neuroscience perspective, well, first let me share that one of the origin stories of the book Good Anxiety is the loss of um, first my father,
Mm,
followed by my younger brother, and
yeah.
the death of my younger the loss of my younger brother was so unexpected and kind of earth shattering that
Mm,
I know that pain that so many of us go through at some point in our lives of this terrible loss. And part of what got me through that was my morning ritual of meditation over
mm,
tea. I do a tea
yeah.
meditation over the ritual of drinking and brewing tea, and followed by exercise. And whatever comes up, I live in Manhattan, and I'm always afraid of twisting my ankle in the street and then getting run over by a cab. So I work out in my apartment.
Yep.
But the same kind of desire, and from a neuroscience perspective, both of those activities, meditation, I know you're a meditation instructor, and exercise, are working on and changing and improving our neurochemical bath that our brain is
Mm,
bathing in. Exercise is releasing dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline that decreases feelings of depression, anxiety, and enhances our feeling of energy, positive energy activation. Meditation as well. We don't know as much about the molecular biology of it, but it also clearly decreases anxiety levels, and long-term meditation changes the patterns of electrical activity that kind of underlie our resting states in the brain and bring us to these more calming relaxation states of the brain. So I understand why how that can be such comfort in times like that.
mm. And I think thank you for that, because that's a beautiful segue into the book that
Mm.
you've created, which personally, I've read a few of these types of books, but this one, and I said to you before that we got on the call, just the connection to storytelling, to great science, to practicality was really beautiful in this book. But the beginning of this, and how you told the story around, basically what's good anxiety and what's, bad anxiety, and how you
Yeah.
reframe. Even the heading, good
Mm.
anxiety, it's a reframe on anxiety, which we've
Yes.
given this label too. But 40
Hmm.
million people suffer from severe anxiety,
Yes.
which was the stat. Is just beginning there. It's incredible in modern life how we've got to this place of severe anxiety, and how it's affecting us mentally, physically, emotionally, our productive, our performance, everything in life, if we allow
Yes.
it to take control of ourselves.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is the moment to think about anxiety in a different way.
Mm,
And what I try to do is lay out the steps that people can do, and take, and give them practical steps that they can use in their life today. It's not all high level science that, it's good to understand it, but it doesn't help you one little lick. I try to make the book so user friendly, and with the promise that if you use these tools, the 40 tools that I talk about, to re-regulate your anxiety back to the level that it becomes protective for you, then what blossoms from your own particular form of anxiety are these gifts that come from anxiety, that you can't appreciate them and you can't get to them if you are in the depths of anxiety, but they really come from re-regulating anxiety and making anxiety what it was evolved to be. That is a protective mechanism to you, a warning mechanism that keeps you safe, keeps you away from danger.
mm. And you talk about that in the opening of just digging into this a little bit more,
Yeah.
Wendy, the arousal of anxiety,
Hmm.
um, and then sort of, how does that show up in people? Like what are the, for someone that's gonna, maybe hasn't had anxiety or knows it's coming, like what's that look like when it starts to show up a little bit?
Sure, sure. So, anxiety um, is an activation of our stress system. Anxiety is evoked primarily from situations of uncertainty. And of
Mm,
course, in these days, we have
yes.
huge levels, new, unprecedented levels of uncertainty in everybody's life, which is why you gave the stat of 20% or 40 million people were estimated to have clinical levels of anxiety, and that number is thought to have gone up by about 30% since the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But let me be clear that my book, Good Anxiety, is not a treatment for clinical levels of anxiety. That, like a broken leg, you need medical treatment. There are professionals that you need to go to. I am dealing with everyday anxiety, which is
Yep.
lower on the spectrum of anxiety, but shares many of the same um, feelings and uses at a much lower scale the same stress system, is activated by the same stress system. So this stress system has been with us evolutionarily for 2.5 million years. It's the same system that gets activated if you were a woman 2.5 million years ago and you hear that noise from just over beyond the bush, and it could be a lion. That is anxiety. That is the threat of a lion. You're not sure what is there. It's uncertainty. And what happens is your stress systems gets activated. It is your fight or flight system. So it works beautifully to increase your heart rate, to increase your respiration, to push your blood towards your muscles so that you can either run away really fast and save yourself or fight and save yourself. Unfortunately, we have evolved into a modern culture where there's a 24/7 news cycle that tells us about all the uncertainty that has revealed itself today. And then you go to Instagram and see all the beautiful lifestyles that you will never have because of all this uncertainty. And we are now uh, activating our anxiety and stress protection system way too much to be protective. Anything, even something good done too much becomes bad. Too much
Mm,
chocolate is bad. Well,
yeah.
now we have too much stress and anxiety. So but one can see that it can be protective. You want that activation when there is a danger in your life, or when there's a credible threat about something that you have to get active for. And a lot of the book is um, teaching us to use that activation, that energy that comes from stress and anxiety, and use it for good. Don't just use that energy to keep worrying about what if this, what if that, what if the other thing. What if you change that what if list that plagues me right before I go to sleep and change that into a to-do list? So use that energy activation to actually address each one of those worries in some way or another. So you can start checking off that list and get some closure and kind of close the loop on what your anxiety was designed to do, which is to get you into action.
Yeah, I think that's such a good starting point, because I think I feel, or do you feel like, I feel like we've sort of created this unhealthy, we've created unhealthy practices that actually trigger anxiety with technology, with our phones, with a lack of,
Yes.
potentially a lack of movement, like a lack of exercise, and too much
Mm-hmm.
screen time. That
Yes.
these are within themselves practices that,
Mm-hmm.
can either be healthy. Again, what you're saying is really so much gold in that. Is it could be healthy or unhealthy depending on your relationship to that.
Yes.
um, and we've got to be a little bit more aware of what are those triggers or practices or behaviors that we've got that are, helping or hindering us at any particular time.
Yes, exactly. It is that awareness. And so, kind of the steps in the book are to use some of these immediate tools to
Mm,
quell your anxiety, because you can't step back, you can't reframe, you can't think about it in a different way when you're in the depths of anxiety. So, what is the best way to bring yourself out of anxiety? And you will be very familiar with this: breath meditation or
mm,
deep breath work. Why? Because you are literally activating the part of the nervous system that counteracts that stress, that fight or flight part of the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system.
mm.
This other part of the nervous system that we want more of in our lives, called the parasympathetic nervous system, does everything the opposite. It slows our heart rate, it deepens our respiration, it puts blood back into our digestive system so that we can digest. This is the rest and digest part of the nervous system. And the best way to activate that we can do consciously, is deep breathing. 4-part breath is the kind that I like to
Yeah.
recommend. I'm sure you have different, a wide range of recommendations, but just inhaling on a 4 count, holding for a 4 count, exhaling on a 4 count, and holding for a 4 count can really, not only effective, but you can do it in the middle of that meeting that you're having anxiety, in the middle of that date that it's not going so well. Just breathe deeply, come back into yourself. Very, very powerful.
Yeah, it is like, 4-part breathing or box breathing. It's just,
Mhm.
I think it's a really simple practice that for anyone that's not trained in mindfulness or meditation, who doesn't do it a lot, it provides enough connection to breath that you experience it fully, but also provides enough guidance where you're moving through the breath in every 4 seconds, that you're not going to completely get lost and distracted and taken away, if you're a beginner. And I think that's the beauty
Mm.
of it. It grounds you back, and it's so practical in a working environment, in a relationship, or even mid conversation, where you can just do a round and
Yeah,
just come back in. Um,
exactly.
and do you see, Wendy, like, you talk about clinical anxiety versus, sort of everyday anxiety or lower
Hmm.
level? Like, is it like, is it a little bit like, you know prevention? Like, if you eat well, if you exercise,
Mm.
you still might get cancer, but your chances of
Right.
getting sick reduce significantly because of the pre-work you're doing. Your performance within the moment or within your career or your life is going to be will be better, but you're actually
Yeah.
preventing longer term chances of developing anxiety, depression, by doing the pre-work. Is there any science to that? Because I talked to this a little bit, and I think it does, but I don't have the science to back that up.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not familiar with any clinical study that has addressed that question directly, and maybe some of those studies will be inspired by our current, epidemic
Mm.
of anxiety. But I fully believe that the tools that you have on hand, because some of the tools are accessible immediately. The four bar breath, you don't need a lot of practice. It actually it's helpful if you do practice it and kind of develop some skill or some habit forming to do that. But other approaches that I talk about in the book, the mindset shifts, are so powerful. They are useful for all aspects of your life for the rest of your life, and become tools and armor, because we're all going to experience stress and anxiety. We cannot prevent losses in our family,
Mm.
that will inevitably happen, but you can develop these skills to shift your mindset, and just the mindset of going in. I know I'm going to go through this, but I mean, the the new appreciation of love and family and relationships that I had after the losses that I experienced, that was really a kind of a foundational story and experience for this book. I never, had that not happened, this book would be completely different,
Mm.
because I realized that there was profound new learning and profound new appreciation of life, of my family, of my relationships, and all the people that helped me get through that. Uh, that that wisdom, I then turned around, and maybe I needed more gifts to come from
Mm.
difficulties. I said, well, anxiety is not nearly the depth of pain that I just went through, but it is pain, it's fear, it's a lower grade.
Yeah.
What wisdom comes from that? And I picture myself looking back, kind of squeezing out all the wisdom that could come from these daily, everyday anxiety events. And that turned into the gifts or the superpowers of anxiety that are my favorite part of the book.
Yeah, no, it's so good, and I think it's so real for so many people. That's the bit that I loved
Mm,
about it. It's the relatability to, and I think that's where the book needed the stories in it that you
mm,
share, that we all, because we all share those stories, and to
yeah,
just throw all science at it with no life experience, I
yeah,
think wouldn't do it justice. So I think that's it's so important, and something that I really took from the book when he was like, you talked about building resilience, but we sort of you sort of named seven things, or seven practices, or I'm not even sure if they're practices, but you talk about things like cognitive flexibility. Um,
yeah,
you talk about social support, mindfulness, exercise. There's sort of seven things early in that book that I actually thought
right.
were really great things to sort of just discuss a little bit. And
Sure.
I'll just it sort of starts with and you can do it. You explain what resilience is, which is that optimistic outlook, often referred to as a positive effect, has shown to reduce negative mood and anxiety and quicken recovery from traumatic events. And I'd love for you to talk about that, because for me, this idea of what we do gets talked about a lot, but it doesn't get again put into practice much, like of what you can actually do to deepen that.
Right, right. So, yeah, I think that's such an important tool that I provide in the book. How do you build your resilience so you can prepare for, the everyday anxieties and then the occasional, terrible things that might happen? And number one really is that mindset, that outlook
Mm.
that you have. um, I am guilty of worrying, like, oh my god, what is the next bad thing that's going to happen? Have a bad week, and you fall back into that, um, uh, um, just survival mode, that you're just this
Yeah.
boat on a stormy water. Well, what if you say, that you're not a boat on a stormy water? There's so many things that you can control, so many things that you do well, that are going well in your life. And that's where I think this moment of mindfulness in the breathing.
Mm.
You have your breath, you have your body. I love in my morning meditation, I'm often doing kind of an open monitoring meditation, and just appreciating the joy of having feeling good in my body, or whatever part of me
Yeah.
feels good, to really acknowledge that and savor that, and try, and it takes some time. Some of us are more pessimistic. I come from science. There is no group more pessimistic than a group of neuroscientists trying to solve a problem, because most answers are going to be wrong.
Mm.
However, the optimism comes from the knowledge of brain plasticity and the appreciation that the brain is this amazing creative organ. And thank goodness I have a brain that can help me through this this problem. And thank goodness that the brain is as amazing, and including my brain. My brain is one of the most complex structures known to humankind. Let's see how I can use it today. So that might be a nerdy way to think about optimistic outlook, but I'm a neuroscientist, so that's
Yeah,
how
no,
I think about it.
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so, I mean, I think the other thing that people take for granted is humor. And how, and I go to humor because I don't know about you, but I was a devotee of all the late night talk shows during all the pandemic and the
Mm.
shutdown. And I just needed to laugh at
Yeah.
something reliably and laugh at our circumstances. And I think that is so powerful. And one of my tips for decreasing anxiety is just call your funniest friend. Just call them
Yeah.
and talk to them. And I have a funniest friend, and so I put her on speed dial regularly. There's nothing more joyful than laughing with somebody. So humor is one of those tools of resilience that's so important.
Yeah. I was listening to another podcast, and it was from a guy who was a Navy SEAL, and he was talking about
Mm,
being in the, um, doing the SEAL training, and
yeah.
they're on the beach, and they're they're doing sit ups in the water, and it's super hard. And he said what happens is the instructors they'll call out, we've got hot chocolate, we've got donuts. If you want to quit, you can come and grab a donut and a hot chocolate. And
Yeah.
trying to almost persuade these guys to give up. And if you give up, you're
Mm,
out. But it
mm,
was funny. It was the guy that was in there, and they're talking about it. And one of the guys, he said in SEAL training, then calls out to the instructor, are they chocolate donuts? Because I'm not going to quit unless I've got chocolate donuts, right? Which was the joke. And
yeah.
the guy next to him laughed. And again, what you spoke about is the serotonin and all the chemicals come out because you're laughing and you've got humor. And what he said is the guys that couldn't even laugh at the joke next to him were the ones that were
Yeah.
going to quit first. But the ones that could
Uh-huh.
actually have the capacity to laugh were going to
Yeah.
get through. They were going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that, and I believe that humor is so um, powerful, and that the other thing that's very powerful is um, altruism,
Mm,
as something to get you away from me, and what's bothering me and what's wrong with my life. And you know almost everybody can turn around and appreciate that they have more than another group. And
yeah,
what can you do to help this other group that might need your help, just with a donation, or uh, you know paying for somebody's coffee
yeah,
behind you that you don't even know? Just why do you do that? Because it gives you a huge dopamine
it
burst.
does.
That is so powerfully feel good. It's like a secret thing people don't realize. And that is part of what brought me to one of my favorite gifts or superpowers of my own anxiety. And that is the superpower of empathy, related
Mm,
to altruism. So this comes from, and I describe in the book, one of my longest standing personal forms of anxiety is social anxiety, because as a young girl I was very, very shy. I was always not in the cool kids group I always wanted to be, and always a wallflower, never, never dancing. And it crept into the classroom where I was a very good student, but I was always afraid of engaging in class because I was afraid of being wrong, another form of social anxiety. Well, of course, I've learned to get over that. I'm a speaker now, and I love giving talks. But I realized in writing this book that I was employing my own form of empathy in my classroom, because I from day one, I always spent as much time as I could not just answering the questions of the kids that raise their hands, say, pick me, but coming to class early, just trying to engage with students more casually, staying later, because I know that so many students want to engage with me and show me what they know, but they're too scared, just like I was. And so I realized I was using my deep knowledge of my own personal form of anxiety to give to others, to create my own personal brand of empathy. And that's what I did. So I'll ask all of your listeners to think about what they can do, how they can transform their deep knowledge of their own anxiety and help somebody else because of it.
It's when you're saying that, Wendy, and I'm picturing this story of it's like a closed loop of if you actually can go out there to be more empathetic and more altruistic and help others,
Mm,
you're gonna make other people feel better, but you're gonna feel
yes,
better because of it. And then
exactly.
from that, your performance as a lecturer, or your how you show up in whatever you do, is going to be improved because you give more time to others, you're more receptive, um, and you're just going to be better at your job or better at whatever you do, which then again flips back into you feeling better again. So it's like it just keeps working when we can get into that mindset, or that behavior and practice of giving, of service, of growth, of all these great attributes and ingredients for life that help others, but in turn will help yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's a self-fulfilling or a perpetual
Mm.
circle that we need more of. I mean, what if everybody was more empathetic one time tomorrow? What would that do to our world today? That could be earth-shattering in a good way for once.
Do, do
Yeah.
you think people like do you think that people why people don't do it is they just don't have, and I'm just reading a note at the moment, um, about you know ex- I have a note here. Beerlock explains that the brain body response is too much pressure and takes up valuable brain space. Like the idea that people actually don't have the mental capacity to be empathetic, or they'd like to be, but they're so caught in themselves and their stories and what's going on within them that they actually don't have the ability to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that is true. I think that, I think stress and anxiety can really narrow our our vision and narrow our worlds into me and why I'm not feeling good right now. Self care, don't get me wrong, is very, very important. But what they don't realize is if they can just get out of that that modality and
Mm.
help somebody else and see the power that they have, it is a way to get your power back, to help somebody else in an altruistic way. They don't even have to know it's you. You know, there's something very, very powerful about that. I tell a story in the book. One of our uh, one of our characters that we talk about in the book is a student who went from living in the basement of his parents' house after college. He couldn't get a job. He was scared to try. He would need to live up to his potential, and he ended up going on a mission to uh, um, um, El Salvador to help build
Mm.
houses and teach English. And just getting out of that situation and just spending your whole day kind of like you going, getting out of your regular habitat and going running in
Mm.
nature every day. But on top of that, he added, I'm teaching young kids English. This is changing their
Yeah.
life, and I have the capacity to do it. He came back a different person. You can see it in his eyes, you can see it in his complexion. It was a beautiful thing, and it just shows that's a positive coping mechanism. It's one of the tools that we talk about in the book is
Mm.
that is kind of radical altruism or empathy, but it works. It works
Yeah.
if you can do it.
And how impactful, positively or negatively, are our environments on our anxiety?
Yeah, I think they are so powerful. Going back to that first enriched environment experiment that Marion Diamond did back in the 1960s, that access to things or denial of things that you put in your environment, either consciously or unconsciously, has a huge impact on your life and on your brain. So, one empowering way to think about that is think about all the things that you can control. You can control how much movement you put into your life. By
Mm.
movement, I mean walking. I don't mean you have to go spend another $200 on the special shoes and the fancy shorts. Just walk outside. You have control about on that. You can do that. Food that you put in in your mouth. Can you decrease the fat-filled food? Decrease just by one packet the number of processed foods that you eat in a day, and that is a very positive impact on your life. Yes, your environment, and that's just things. People can also be a huge stress and anxiety on your life. So who are the people that you're bringing around you? Are they the ones that love and support you and can be your coaches and make you laugh, or are they the ones that are making you feel even worse about yourself? So environment is huge.
And Wendy, would you put also your social media, what you're consuming on the news, in that environment of controlling
Yes.
those aspects?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is particularly for particular age groups, can be a huge part of their everyday cognitive environment. And so, what are you spending time doing? Looking at pictures that make you think, "Oh God, I don't have that," or looking at things that inspire you, stories that inspire you, people that people that you love on your Instagram, rather than
Mm.
things that you might want to have that you don't have. So even social media, it doesn't have to be, just get off it completely. Reformulate it into those images and people and things that inspire you, rather than bring up that anxiety or fear or even depression.
Yeah, that's such good advice, I think. And I think we're still in Australia. There's still a couple of states that are in lockdown, and I
Mhm.
work with clients around just being really conscious of what they're consuming on their socials. That it's not spinning them, it's not taking away energy, and they're just, and even the times that they're consuming, that it allows them to still get good quality sleep and make good
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one of the good things that comes from lockdown. There's a small but important number, and that is you have much more control
Mm.
over your environment. I took on the challenge of sleep. I've had insomnia in the past. I've used acupuncture successfully to help that, but I really wanted to explore all the different things you're supposed to do to make your sleep better. And all of them made tiny little changes. Yeah, maybe it's good. I'm not sure. But the thing that really helped me was when I gave up alcohol. Sorry, all the
Yeah.
alcohol lovers out there. When and I loved a good cocktail. Don't get me wrong, but I noticed and I was able to control how much I drank and when I drank. And boy, it made a huge difference. And I loved how I felt without that alcohol, with the deeper sleep, and it's not like I have perfect sleep right now, but I know that, and I do have a special celebratory drink every once in a while, but I know the consequence.
Yeah.
And I only do it at particular situations. But try that out. Use your lockdown to try that out. Foods. What foods are most energizing to you? What time of day does your exercise give you the biggest boost for the rest of your day? All those things are doable in lockdown when they're not, when you have to commute your 45 minutes there and back to work.
Yeah, I love that, and it's it's awesome because we're still in that, and I'm going to use that because I think and exactly what I've got written as the next point. You're reframing old mindsets or old stories that we're telling about lockdown. That
Yes.
you can actually switch and reframe those mindsets, and you've got that in the book as one of the things that really jumped out to me is like as a coach, like reframing how important that is, but reframing old mindsets, it just takes it to another level.
Yes. It does. It's powerful. It takes some practice. And so we spend some time on it, and but it is so powerful. And this is where we get into, it's not just powerful for your mind, but you start to appreciate that mind body connection. Change
Mm.
your mind and you change your body physiology. You can change your digestive system. And I love the experiment on mindset where they brought everybody in and had them eat the same exact ice cream cone, and half of them were told, this is light and fit ice cream, enjoy it. And the other half were told, this is, the best cows in Brittany came up with the cream for this highly fat but so delicious ice cream. And guess what? They had different ghrelin release levels, which is the hormone that makes you feel full. So if you got the Brittany fat filled ice cream story, you had high releases of ghrelin that said, "Ah, I'm so satisfied. That was so filling." But if you got the light and fit version, you had significantly lower release of ghrelin. It's the same ice cream, same exact ice cream.
That's
So,
incredible. Yeah.
yeah,
We see that so often in society is people see the same thing through different lenses with a different mindset and get a completely different result from this, from exactly the same thing. And
yeah, yeah.
what would
I,
you, sorry, Wendy, what would you say, sorry, when, like, we're going to finish up in a minute, but,
yeah,
um, you know, if you're going to take away a handful of key things around, reframing anxiety and using anxiety for good, like if you're going to give the listeners something sort of just to be able to take with them now, especially if somewhere in lockdown, what would be, the top 3 to 5 that you'd suggest?
yeah. Top three. Number one, um, use and practice the breath, the breath work, the 4-part breathing or
Mm-hmm.
box breathing, as you called it, to quell your anxiety. Make it work for you. Make it work so well for you. Practice that because that is a doable, immediate tool. Number two, get used to moving your body when you need, when you're starting to feel that anxiety, just to mix it up with the breath work, because that is so powerful. Go take a walk, go take a run, go up and down the stairs, bring your pets into it, go take your pet for a walk. Great way also to start to regulate and decrease those feelings of anxiety. And then now that you have a great basis to kind of get your anxiety levels in better check, then you have a moment to step back and do what I did with my anxiety, which is my tip number three: make friends with your own particular form of anxiety. Think of it as not a warm and fuzzy friend, but kind of a prickly friend. Okay. The anxiety tells it like it is. But in thinking about your anxiety like a friend, you start to be able to appreciate better what those quote unquote negative emotions, what that fear is telling you about the situation, what the worry is getting you ready to act on. And it is a good friend that knows you for your whole life, that is telling you something, it's warning you about something. And the last thing that I'll say is that if you learn how to do that, quell your anxiety and start to reframe it as that protective friend to you. Those negative emotions are there for a reason. They've evolved to protect us. They're there to tell us stuff about the world. If you can lean into your anxiety in that way, the promise of the book is that it will make your life more fulfilling, more creative, and less stressful. And that's what I hope for all of my readers and all of the listeners here today, that we're able to do that a little bit for everybody.
Wendy, I can't believe an hour's gone. That was incredible to talk about that, and just the way you can bring it all together at the end was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And Good Anxiety is out now. Is that correct? It's out.
It's going to be out September 7th. It's on pre-order, available on pre-order right now, but it will be available in both book form and audiobook form on September 7th.
Beautiful. And again, probably it would be in the top probably 2 books I've read this year, and I've read quite a few. So it's really up there with, one of the best books I've read, especially in the space of anxiety and just wellness. I don't. It's beyond anxiety. It's a book for improving well-being.
It is.
I think so. Incredible. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luke. This was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for having me on.